Hey, what's going on, pilots? It's great to be back. I know it's been a minute since I've made any type of Gundam review video, but let's just get into it. I appreciate you guys checking me out, even though it's been such a long time. But in this review, I'm going to be looking at the high grade Universal Century GM Cold Districts. Now this guy is pretty cool, pretty nifty. Even though the kit is definitely dated, this guy looks good, just like in this kind of pose. Um, but it is from 2003, so you gotta keep it in your head that it's definitely a 20-year-old mold, or essentially a 20-year-old mold. So it's not going to be as good as something like the high grade Gundam the Origin kit, which going into this, I knew, but I wish I hadn't done some of the things I typically do for high grade kits, which I'll get into later, because it's kind of actually messing with some of the articulation or how everything's kind of fitting together, which is fine, because it's on me. And if you don't do some things I did, that means your kit will be sturdier and you'll be better off for it. So, for the ease of cleanup and any tips I can provide, it was pretty typical. Um, like most kits, there really wasn't, honestly, in terms of it being an old kit, there wasn't um any points where the gates seemed to be in a really annoying position, which is great because it was actually really easy to sand. I believe there may have been just a point on the head that might have presented an issue. Um, Nah, I can't even see it. But like, the only thing that I'll say is obviously on the antenna that it has, the safety nub. That's pretty much the biggest thing. Just be careful if you are trimming the nub and still trying to keep the shape of it. Be careful you're not over sanding or like straight sanding where you're taking like the circular diameter and flattening one side. Um, and not to clip off too much of the material if you go to clip it with a god hand or a high level single blade nipper. Yeah, that's pretty much all I have on the easy cleanup. It's pretty typical. It really wasn't that hard, which is great. I could breeze through this kit in like a couple days of my standard, because you guys know I sand, I sand, I sand. Um, but it's looking pretty good so far. I only have like one thing to clean up, and that's where the antenna is. I actually had to kind of glue it in there, um, because that was the only part that was kind of loose. Now, moving all of this, like it's definitely going to seem like some of the parts are loose depending on what it is, especially this one. It's going to look like the ankles are going to be able to separate easily, but that's on me. Um, I clipped the pegs for those things, and now it's kind of like not as tight fitting as it should be. But I'm either going to fix that by just gluing them together, because the ankle armor part really isn't bad. Um, Regarding the color separation of the kit, the color separation is pretty good to start off. The only real color correction stickers you have are these red ones. It's pretty simple. In terms of that, you don't really need to do too much for the color separation unless you want to do a little bit extra on your own, which is nice because it looks pretty good right out of the box. And then we move on to the articulation of the kit. The arm articulation is pretty good. You can raise the arm like to that point and then bring it in to about there. Like the actual raising is good. I don't like this articulation too much. But again, it is a 20-year-old or practically a 20-year-old kit, so it's not terrible. These shoulder vents even move a little bit, I believe, based on that. But like the shoulders definitely move up and down. You can pose them depending on where the arm is on the entire arm, which is a blessing and a curse. The arm itself has full 360-degree rotation because of the way the peg system is on this one. The wrists are pretty typical. You can actually even back them out a little bit to get more articulation, which I believe is pretty typical of high-grade kits in general. The legs are pretty limited. I don't really particularly like the articulation of the legs. Because not only is that a problem, then you start getting gaps up here for the actual leg articulation. So realistically, you can only really get to about there without having aesthetic issues on the legs. Same thing with even the front of the leg. You're really only getting that kind of articulation to the point where it stops. You can bring it a little forward, but again, you risk there being a gap on the back here. I guess not. I guess it's better on this end. But there's still a little bit of a gap there, so you have limited leg articulation in that direction. Foot articulation is okay as well. It's on a ball joint, so it's actually a little bit better than some high-grade kits. It's pretty much the same type of mechanism that the early grades are on, just in the opposite direction, that the actual ball is on the foot part, and then the polycap is on the ankle instead of it being the ball joint is facing outward, and then this has the receptacle. The inside of the legs in here are just on a normal ball joint, so it's pretty mediocre. It's almost like the Jigen, if you've seen that review. So I'm not really the biggest fan of the articulation of this kit, but I don't really have a basis to go on because I don't know if it's really good for its time or it's not. Even the head just has basic movement, but it doesn't even have like a tilt forward or back. It's just a rotate about a ball joint. You can still get some good poses out of it for sure. Like I actually like the pose I currently have it in, but it's basically my typical pose for kits, and I can't really do much else without it looking odd or weird. And with articulation, particularly with the weapons, this does have a stock that comes down. So when you're, I made a modification so I could actually rest it on the arm. But if you get this kit straight up, you're gonna have to work around the way that stock is situated, and I don't really like that. So overall, I think the articulation on this kit is a like solid 5. It's either a 4 or 5 because it's definitely below average, but for it being as old of a kit that it is, I want to give it some points. The gimmicks of the kit, the shield is on a ball joint, so you can kind of maneuver it around without it having to sit in the hand. I don't have it out because I actually don't know where I put it, but it does have just a straight up beam saber hand like the old kits do, where it's a separate piece, including the hand and the beam saber. And I guess that could be considered a gimmick, but it's also more work because you basically have to paint it up to make it look relatively nice. So what I wound up doing is actually modding the one beam saber that it does have and just drilling a hole in it with a pin vise, the same size of a beam, like of the typical beam saber thing that you like clip out. That's made out of the rubbery plastic. And it fits in just fine. Aesthetically, there's long seam lines along here. There's long seam lines along the arm here, and I don't like that. I'm probably going to try and figure out some way to clean that up. Even with the upper like thigh area, same thing, vertical. I'm calling them seam lines. I guess they're more so joining lines of the part because seam lines are not that. It's based on the mold of the part. So I'm probably going to wind up going back and clean that up with a cement method, like the plastic cement. So what you do is you wind up putting plastic cement along the entire axis, pushing them together. The cement turns the color of the plastic that it's welding, and then you go through and sand or take your hobby knife and clean it up and then sand. For decals, you basically just have the sticker set there, or you get like GM oriented decals. I know there's a couple people, like I think Delpy has a GM oriented decal set. I think even G Rework does as well. That's what I would recommend for decals. For possible paint scheme, like I said, I'd probably keep it the same or do more of an Arctic style on it. Like maybe do like a lighter blue somewhere in here, especially if I did wind up scribing it just for practice. This is like a $10 kit, so I don't really mind if I kind of mess that up. Or just changing this red to like a blue would make it be so much more of a actual Arctic feel. So my major plans for this kit is, like I said, to kind of clean up some of the joining lines that are apparent because of the way the pieces interface with each other. Doing a more Arctic paint scheme, like maybe even a more blue tinted white almost, but all in all, it's kind of already there. It just needs a little bit more, and then adding water slide decals that I get third party. But if you guys want a recommendation on this kit, if you're a GM collector, I would say definitely go for it. Definitely go out, get this GM. It looks really cool. If you can wait for a GM to modify it, because really all you need to do is add the shoulders, and the GM will look like a Cold Districts GM. You just would have to recolor it. I would say do that. Just so you have a more articulate model. But if you're a GM collector, I say get it. If you're looking just for a kit to kind of start off with too, I would say, yeah, go for it. It's a pretty simple kit, but the early grades do it better, and they have way more articulation, like just way more articulation, I think, than this kit does. So I'd recommend those kits over this if you're trying to get your foot in the door. They're simpler to make, easier to clean up, and you could do a whole lot with them, or you don't have to do anything at all, depending on where you're at in your hobby experience. So that's pretty much my final thoughts. Just running through a quick rating system. I would say cleanup was probably, like a 9 or 10, not hard. There really weren't, I don't even think there was really any seam lines to clean up. Assembly, also 10, no problems really. Color separation, I would say it's about a 8 or 9, only because they do have some color correction stickers, but that's to be expected with a high grade. Articulation of the kit, probably, if I had to compare it to my other high grades, I would honestly rate it a 3. Taking into consideration that is almost a 20-year-old kit, I would say it's probably about average for the time, so probably a 5. But otherwise, I really don't think it's that great. Gimmicks of the kit, like there really aren't any to evaluate it on, so I'm not going to put a rating out for that. Decals, no rating is a high grade. If high grade has decals, usually that's already above and beyond, so nothing there. And that's really my my overall rating. So I would say the overall rating for this kit, even though cleanup is nice, I would probably say it is a hard 4 or 5 for me. The articulation is what's killing the kit. So overall, those are my thoughts on this kit. I appreciate you guys stopping by the hangar. I hope you guys like this video. I hope you guys subscribe if you really enjoy my content. But I'll see you on the next one. And that will be the Gundam FSD is what I want to roll with. I've been eyeing this kit up in my backlog for a very long time. And I finally just want to move forward with it. So that's what we're going to roll with. And I'll see you on the initial thoughts video for that one. Without further ado, sortie out and hobby on, pilots. Hey pilots, did you like that kit that you just saw in this video? Are you thinking, maybe I should get that for myself? Well, then look no further than the Gundam Shoppers Network. At the Gundam Shoppers Network, you can find kits from 1144 to perfect grade scale, and not only that, they also have other model kits that will suit your fancy no matter what your hobbying style is. They have Pokemon kits, they have 30-minute mission kits, they have kits left and right. And not only that, they also have a system in place where if they don't have the kit, they can direct you to a vendor that does. There is a community resources tab that has Gundam tutorials, Gundam tips and tricks, and preferred US and international retailers that have been thoroughly vetted through as to ensure that they are a legitimate vendor as well as a trusted vendor. Now, if you guys are looking to get a jump start on some of the other purchasers of these kits, then I highly recommend joining the GSN Discord. They have that link on their Facebook page. If you have a Facebook, just search up the Gundam Shoppers Network and it will take you to either their personal page or their own group. And there you have it. You'll be sorted for all your hobbies to come. If you guys